In response to the recent events in Charlottesville, something interesting happened in Charleston, South Carolina yesterday that could be a roadmap forward. A secessionist and a black nationalist came together to make sure the racial tensions in their town do not lead to what happened in Charlottesville. They agreed to what they're calling the Charleston Accord, which says though they may continue to be on opposite sides of an issue, they would have an open dialogue, promote legal avenues for change, work to prevent violence, and collaborate for the public good when they could. As part of our Race Matters Solutions, tonight we have with us James Bessinger of the South Carolina Secessionist Party and Jonathan Thrower, who goes by Shakim, a self-described black nationalist. Gentlemen, welcome. Jonathan, I want to start with you. I'll call you Shakim from now on. To say that the two of you have different worldviews is an understatement. I mean, as of a few nights ago, you and James were exchanging critiques on Facebook. So give me an idea. How tense are race relations in Charleston, and what changed after Charlottesville?
Yes, well, race relations have actually been on a sharp decline ever since the Walter Scott and Dylann Roof incident. We know that the Confederate flag over the South Carolina State House has actually been a boiling point in the media and also in the minds of the people here. Race relations have basically gone down. So essentially what we are looking at now is a situation where you have two ideologies, basically amongst white people and black people. And there are people who don't actually see it as a race issue. It's also looked as a class issue because classism is an issue also more so as race. But right now, it's almost like a boiling point. And there has been a lot of words exchanged lately. Tensions are very high. Now with a lot of leaders, black and white, calling for the John C. Calhoun statue and a lot of the Confederate monuments to come down in the city, that has sparked the ire and the attention again and put the focus back on race relations in the city. And they were already high to begin with. I mean, very tense to begin with.
James Bessinger, I want to ask you, for your group, the Confederate monuments and the statues are a source of pride. For members of Shakim's group, they're a source of pain. So how do you have a conversation about something like this, which is deeply personal for people, without it coming to blows?
I think we have to do that by exactly what we've started here in Charleston. We don't see a lot of dialogue hardly any dialogue at all between organizations like ours and organizations like his that represent two very polar opposite groups in this debate. It's been difficult to try to find someone, at least on our side, that we could talk to like that. But I think sitting down and having a first-time dialogue is a good way to start that process.
James, when you first heard that Shakim, when he reached out to you, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I heard from him the first time. We got to know who each other was a little bit, and it was the first time I've heard from someone on that side of the debate who didn't describe me as a racist or a fascist or a neo-Nazi. So it was kind of refreshing to see that there were people on the other side of this debate that were paying close enough attention to at least see where we were really coming from without jumping to assumptions.
And Shakim, when you first met him, what was going through your mind?
Well, you know, it's really kind of hard when I look at a white person with a Confederate flag, it brings up a lot of emotion, right? Because normally that brings images of an enemy. And, you know, in spite of the fact that all of them aren't Klansmen, which we know, and all of them aren't, you know, KKK members, it's still something that you have to really get over psychologically in your head, especially as being a black person. So that was something that really kind of took me a moment to get over. And also we have a lot of issues with the Klan here in South Carolina. So it was just something that, you know, really took something in me to sit down and say, okay, let's see how this issue of race can actually be resolved without coming to blows. And let me just add something really quick. You asked him a question about, you know, how do we look at this issue?
Yeah.
How do we, you know, kind of resolve this issue without coming to blows? One of the things that I had to do on my end, as far as talking to black people as a whole and being a leader in this community, I had to really show them that taking down a statue does not end systematic oppression, whether it's classism or racism. So I really wanted them to get a big picture understanding of what's being done here. And if we begin to invest all of our energy, and I'm not saying don't take the statues down, because if they come down, I'm happy. But what I had to do before I can even have a conversation about the relevancy of our conversation, I had to let them know that fighting to take a monument down is not necessarily a substantive victory. So that's kind of like what I had to overcome before I can let them know, okay, this is what we're going to do to try to prevent some of the violence.
So James, how do you work with organizations, and how do you try and stop the violent, pulling down of statues that might already be planned or might happen in the future? How do the two of you work together to make sure that at least people know that an organization or a pact or an accord like yours exists, and that this would be a violation of that?
Well, we've both gone to our communities and let them know what we've agreed on. Charleston has a wonderful reputation of not responding in that type of way to crises like this. We saw that with Walter Scott. We saw that with Dylan Roof. Charleston has a different response, and like Governor McMaster said the other day, Charleston does things differently. South Carolina does things differently. So I think that what we've started is it's gotten a lot of positive feedback already, and it's just given people a little bit of hope considering what we've seen so far. I have a strong inkling that if we were to see things like what we saw in Durham, North Carolina the other day, that those types of people would come out of state. I don't think we'd see South Carolinians acting that way.
Finally, I want to ask both of you in kind of brief responses if you can. Shakim, I want to start with you. What about the people that are kind of further on the fringe from your position, who are going to look at you and say, you know what, you've sold out. Just by shaking this man's hand, you've missed the point. You're not one of us anymore. And eventually, James, I want you to answer the same question.
Okay, so this is what I'll say. In 2015, when the Confederate flag came down, after we fought so hard to get that down, we see the murder rate is still increasing. We see that education has still continued to remain at the bottom. South Carolina is last in education. When you begin to look at the economic conditions that are prevalent in this city, you see that our cities, our urban communities are being starved of resources. So if what you're telling me is that I'm selling out because I'm telling you don't go to jail for pulling down a statue, then I think the problem is with you, and we need to actually refocus our energy and our intelligence on getting solutions that are going to raise the economic level of black people here in this city. So that's what I would say to them.
James Bessinger, what about the neo-Nazis or the Klan or other people who might just say, you know what, you're a traitor. I can't believe you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with this guy right now.
I mean, that's their opinion. They're entitled to that. I would tell them that those organizations that have tried to involve themselves in defense of Southern heritage and monuments, they've only made matters worse. When organizations like that present themselves at these events like what we saw in Charlottesville, it only exacerbates the problem, and they have made absolutely zero progress in alleviating the tension that we feel. As far as calling me a race traitor or what have you, South Carolinians have been, family in lieu of slavery, black and white, for 300 some odd years. So I could care less if someone sees me as a race traitor. Me and this man have more in common with each other than I do with some of those people.
All right, James Bessinger of the South Carolina Secessionist Party and Jonathan Thrower Shakim, thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.